our thought is uh, everybody has challenges in their life, either current or previously, or anticipated in the future. But mainly, when I think about challenges or things that have not gone well, and I think about them quite frequently. And maybe that's part of age. I don't know. You circle back to things that could have been gone better. I don't know. But um, but the thing is, you learn a lot about it, and we're here today. It wasn't like whether it was a mistake or what you perceived as a failure or whatever it was, did not destroy you. Here it is. But um, would you have liked to have foregone that episode? Sure. Yeah. Put me in. I'm in for that. If we can wave a magic wand, but it's kind of impossible. So, but I think people perceive or observe people in their current uh, uh, realm of living and how they interact with them. They go, wow, man, they got it all together. They're just everything they do, everything they touch, everything's golden. So great. Now, part of it is uh, we sell ourselves, a little bit on that too, which is okay. We like to live in the positive and the present, but so maybe you could tell us about an event or events in your life that were kind of impactful and maybe not so fun, but you had to get over it. So, as we talked about, there's no going around it, only through it. So, well, my question is this: Have you looked at some significant event you thought was kind of impactful, life altering, not easy, and uh, because there's nobody listening to this doesn't have them too.
Yeah.
They just go in there, but they may be surprised to hear about it. You know what I mean? And then you got through it and how you got through it, and that's kind of I just think the main message to people, as far as I'm concerned, is you're not alone in
Right.
this deal. So
I think, and I have business ones, personal ones, and I do think that there's some that start off when you're younger. Um, one of the initial ones that I think that I'll watch adults now deal with situations, and then it'll always come back to some sort of like childhood thing, right? And the first one I always think about is like, listen, I grew up, life's life. I went through divorces with parents, right? And I've seen people revert back to, I operate this way because this happened with my parents, or I operate this way because my mom is gone. You know what I mean? Or my dad left. And, I grew up and we've been open. You and I've had tons of conversations, and through, again, divorces as a younger kid, I went through the fact that my biological mom was gone when I was a year and a half. And those aren't easy things to grow up through. Now, gratefully, I had you and I had my mom, who was my adopted mom, help through those processes. But I had this perception, I think, at a young age, and I don't know where this came from, and it was helpful for me, that I had this realization that my parents, who were going through these things personally themselves, were just trying to figure it out. They were going through their own life. And I think sometimes as adults, or as even when we're younger, we try to make this bigger, grander story about tough times in our childhood, whether it's with our parents, or we hang on to stuff, we hang on to divorces and things like that, or we hang on to the fact that, you had a parent that left, and like that really had nothing to do with you. It had to do with people that were just trying to figure out their life, and they were young at one point too. And so I always go back to that one first because it gave me a lot of perspective on life, that we're all just trying to figure it out. And I've dealt a lot with clients that will revert back to a story that pertains to their childhood when it comes to that. Like, my dad left, my mom left, or I had this divorce, or I had this thing happen. And for me, the thing was, that was just my parents trying to figure it out. And sometimes people in relationships, it doesn't work and it had nothing to do with you. And you just need to do your best to find the love with the people who are around you who care about you and not have any attachment or harbor any ill will to any of those situations, if that makes sense. And I think that's one of the first ones that then I think has been the catalyst for helping me out with personal failures after that, to just be like, hey, this whole thing is, we've talked about it since we started this podcast, is like, we're just doing our best to figure it out, and things are going to come up constantly and they're going to happen, and they don't necessarily happen to you. They are just situations, and you have to have some sort of perspective and gratitude and find the good in all those and go forward. And so I go back to that situation a lot when talking to clients, because there was two ways that I could always have looked at that. Woe is me. I grew up through divorce and blended families, all that kind of stuff. And I had one parent that wasn't around, and I could harbor all of that stuff for all the way into my adulthood that eventually could leak into how I parent my kids. Or I could look at it with gratitude of, I had my dad and I had other people in my life that deposited massive amounts of love into me that helped develop who I was. So I think sometimes what people will happen is these life events will happen to them and they make the choice of letting those situations impact their life either positively or negatively and how they perceive them, if that makes sense. And so I think that I'm grateful for that as a younger kid, because it it just gave me a different perspective going into adulthood, which then led into multitude of my own personal failures. And if that makes sense, and it's interesting, right? Because you asked me that question and you were a part of it, um, but I have a lot of gratitude for it, um, and that's one of my first ones. And I think from there, you know, this is a laundry list of them as I start going through. But is there anything that sticks out, because you know me so well? That's the first one that comes to mind, and that's not necessarily, that's more of a tough time than it is like oh, I did this, I made this decision. But from my life and my timeline, is there anything in there that you're like, hey, I have more questions about this situation and how you perceived it or how you dealt with it going forward?
No, I don't, because it sounds kind of callous, but the reality is when you're in the middle of it, you're in the middle of it. Uh, I wouldn't wish that on my enemy, but you got to do what you got to do. If my perspective on that time frame of my life is that I did what I had to do. I'm proud of what I've done. I'm glad that uh, you were my son, and we had a reason to take care of you. There was a reason for my life. So that's a different thing. It's hard to do when you're that young. But looking back on it, it's I spent my whole life with children, children and issues and all that kind of stuff. And to me, um, I don't remember really having any 20s. To me, it was high school, start college, married, kid, divorce. I was like 40 years old when I was 22.
Yeah.
And it's just been that way. Now I'm reverting to my childhood now in my old age, so that's good. I'm very, very selfish. So, I want that candy. I'm going to have that candy. But no, I would, for me, any of those kind of failed relationships were based on immaturity, just not even knowing anything about getting into relationships you had no business being in.
Mm-hmm.
This is just what you did. Well, it's you have girlfriends and you get married, you have kids. That's not. It's a little more complicated than that. So does the does the impact of let me just say this to you. If I had a choice between take the kids out of it, okay, so that's not fair. Of being alone and having gone through all of that, I'd have taken being alone. Okay. for sure. And feel, oh, that's harsh. Not quite, not even close to what that is like. I've been completely broke multiple times and had to dig myself out. And I have no intention of ever going back there. I can tell you that. Um, but then again, the period of life that we're talking about was 40 years ago.
Right.
I didn't repeat it the next 40 years. But that period of time seems like it was decades long, you know.
Yeah, and
So
it's not. I start with that one, and it's not. Like I said, it's not. I think that in dealing with the adult and working with them, I use fitness and health as this segue into, by the time you create some relationship with people, you start learning a little more about them. And then I would say a lot of times there is some story or some situation that comes up from, this is everybody. We talked about this when Michelle was on. There's something in their growth or their development in their situation that then perpetuates itself as they start to get older. And so I start with that one because it wasn't easy, and again, I was along for the ride as a child, but I think I've watched people harbor those situations or, tough times into adulthood, and then like I said, what's interesting is as we start spinning it forward into other failures, I think it taught me a lot of lessons, and it just taught me how to, you know, it just taught me how to surround yourself with people that care about you, and then and not necessarily stare at the negative side of a situation and look more into like what was great that came out of it. Now spin that forward, you know, very similar situation. Last thing you want to do is repeat yourself. I, went through let's, have my own relationships. I get married, I get divorced. Would I change the situation if it was just me, or if I was to give the advice to my own children, would I offer them some advice based on my experience to maybe make it better for them? Sure. Would I change it for myself because it would change who's in my life right now? No, because it taught me a lot of lessons. And I think sometimes when we go back to revert those stories, they feel decades long. They're not fun. They're painful. They suck. But then the gratitude, again, that's why I go back to that first story, the gratitude side of things. Oh, I needed all of those things to grow as a human being. I needed them because if it would have provided perspective for me and what I wanted in this life, and the mistakes allowed me to go, okay, how would you do this a little bit differently the next time around? So been through divorce, also through that entire situation. I was, again, we crossed over some valleys and stuff like this in business. I got out of college and started my own business and did it, off a lot of grit and fun and passion for an industry, and built something that I was super proud of, and it was like my badge of honor. And through all the personal stuff I was going through, made decisions that I wouldn't make again, but I was trying to make fast decisions because my personal life was not in order, and it impacted my business overall to a point where I was moving myself in and out of my business and not putting good leadership things in place to maintain what I had created. And ultimately led to, selling my business. It led to personal bankruptcy because I was doing things so fast to try and rectify decisions I had made. And it massively sucked for about 2 years of my life. Um, and you're right. When you're in it, it feels like there's an elephant sitting on your chest and you cannot, almost like you're drowning and you can't get out. But luckily I had, people like my wife around me. I had you around me, I had mom around me and stuff that would have conversations of like, this is a moment in time. What's the one thing you can control? What's the next thing you can do? And I just had quality people that were, no matter how positive you are, we all are going to get impacted by negative situations and negative thoughts. And so it felt like an eternity at some points, where I was, it impacted my positivity, it impacted my ego, it impacted, you know, I question a lot of my own decision making in the process. Now, on the other end of it, hopefully what it does is it allows me to give advice to people who come to me and ask for it. Hopefully it'll give me the ability to provide my kids with some perspective when they run into these tough decisions going forward. Um, but it also taught me that that's always that line from Hangover, yeah, but did you die? you know, and in times you do, you feel like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. But I think at the end of it, it just taught me resiliency and perspective, and it taught me a ton of lessons that now, you know, 10, 12, 15 years later, I'll go, all right, well, that sucked, but I did learn a ton of lessons in there, and I have a lot of gratitude for it. I think that's the tough part for us, is for myself and as humans, when we fail, and we fail hard. And for me, that failure for me of like having to file bankruptcy and do all that kind of stuff was a massive, massive ego hit more than anything. Yes, there was a massive financial strain and all that kind of stuff, but I had to get over, I really had to get over my ego. And I think that was the biggest thing of like, it was such a badge of honor for me to be like, I did this thing and made it so cool. And then it was just crap. And I had to like, not only get over my ego, but almost had to like reestablish my personal identity, that I wasn't tied to successes or failures in business. I had to like be okay. I had to be okay with who I was, you know? And I think it took me a lot longer than I wanted it to. And, like I said, I felt like I sat in
Or
a,
you wanted the pain to be shorter?
yeah, I wanted the pain to be a lot shorter. Um, but it, as I look back on it, it was very ego driven, you know,
Yeah.
and you don't want, and I didn't talk about it, and I had for a long time. I share about it now because not that you're proud of it, you're proud that you've come to the other side of it. But man, I would hide from it for a long time because no one wants to highlight their failures. Like you said, you want to talk about all the cool things you've done and all the successful things you've done and all the accolades you had and all the awards you've had and the success you've had and all that kind of stuff. No one wants to talk about the failures. And for me, business wise, that was the biggest one for
Yeah.
a lot.
I think people actually enjoy the fact that maybe people they admire or they go, wow, they're kind of cool, or you know, they maybe take the lead, follow, uh, that they go, they'd be surprised by that, and so it's kind of like, oh, I didn't know that, yeah, so yeah, from the day of my birth to the day, it's been smooth sailing. Everything I've done is just perfect, man. No, unbelievable. I couldn't ask for anything easier. But I think that there's other things about like the relationship stuff that fails, without saying, listen, we make bad calls. We get tied up with the wrong people. We do, whatever. It's our own behavior. It's a combination of all the above. Who knows? But talk to us about how did that impact your view of relationships going forward? You're out of that one, but any future one. So the in between, you know.
Yeah, I think we talked about this on one of our podcasts before of like when it came to work, like, why are you doing it? What do you want? Like actually to the core of yourself, what are you looking for? And I had a friend at the time as I was going through all of it, and I was just, it's personal strife, and you're irritated for all those different things. You made the judgment call to be in that situation, and it just wasn't right for everybody involved. It's a bad deal, you know. And my assessment going forward was, well, I had to understand like what do I really want in this life, and who do I want to share this life with, and actually like conceptualize that versus I just bumped into somebody at a bar or online or at work and they made me feel funny and now I want to maybe be with that person, and like see how this plays out. And that sometimes is what gets us, I think, into bad relationship situations. And so coming out of that, I had to analyze, well, who is the type of person that I want to be with? And so for me, I literally had this image of an individual, right? And I joking with a friend, I was like, and I said this in my wedding vows, I was like, I actually want a 5'7", 5'6", 5'7", beautiful brunette who's fun and caring and great at business. Like I had this whole thing that I articulated. I knew what I actually wanted, and it's what I would have attracted to me. And there's emotional feelings and stuff like that. But I had this, like, I was able to articulate this mental image without putting a face or a name to it, what I wanted, what I was attracted to. And the interesting thing is for me, that in my life I had a friend who'd been my friend for 5, 6, 7 years, that all of a sudden, after I had articulated this, next thing you know, one day I look over and go, holy hell, this person that was like a peer, never had any, feelings, physical, emotional, whatsoever, just somebody I got along with. All of a sudden, after I was able to articulate this is what I was looking for in an individual, I look over one day and go, oh my God, that's that's the person. And it wasn't like I got attached because but I knew what I wanted. And it just happened that, me and that individual did get along, and we had, you know, so a good connection. And then all of a sudden it was like this weird epiphany. And I tell this story a lot, and it seems weird. I believe in karma. I believe in energy. I believe all this stuff. So I've articulated what I wanted in an individual. I articulated what I wanted, who I wanted to be with going forward. And all of a sudden I look over and my friend has all of these characteristics, and it freaked me out. Versus like, oh God, I'm gonna go chase this person down. I was like, oh, that is exactly the type of person I was talking about, or I was looking for, or whatever. And luckily for me, it's my wife, and it's who we've been married now for 8 years, and we have a beautiful family with 4 kids. But I think what it went down to was I knew what I didn't want in this life, and I all of a sudden was able to articulate exactly the type of person I wanted. And thank God, and it worked out. And it's work going forward, but every day since then has been, it sounds like a friggin' Hallmark card. You have your tough times, your tough conversations, your tough situations with kids and finances and everything else everybody else deals with. But there's nobody else I'd rather do all of that stuff with than my wife now. And I think it came back to, I was able to figure out what I wanted.
Yeah, we often talk. Your mother and I often talk about whatever we decide to do happens.
Uh-huh.
It just does because we either are going to do it or we're not going to do it. And there's kind of an emotional energy to it, an intellectual aspect to it. Sometimes it's a little dicey, but we want to do it, and but if we are on the same page, we make it happen. And it's just always been that way. Where I said we're good luck together. We kind of joke about it, but it's more than luck, right? And so if we say no, if one of us says no, it's no for both of us. You know, if we both say yes, we kind of think on it, sleep on it, whatever. Okay, all right, let's do it. And then it's just it goes wild. From there. Just everyone's on the phone writing notes, and it doesn't matter what it is. It's crazy. But I think that having failed relationships are part of it, like I said, is immaturity, and it's sad, you know. Not that I'm not happy where I'm at, same deal, right? Absolutely, but then it was unnecessary. I look back on some of that was unnecessary upheaval. You could probably skip that part and be okay. But
Yeah, but I go back and forth on that though, right? You could go, well, that was unnecessary, and then I go, but was it unnecessary? Did I
well, I
need that? Did I
yeah,
need to learn who I was? Did I need to have a wake up call for myself, and all that kind of? Did I need to become more mature? Did I? It is. We have a lifetime filled of that sucked, but
but going back to what you were saying about people in their whatever mom and dad weren't nice, so and so left, whatever it is. Yeah. Does it skew your worldview? It will, uh, to the point where you say, I'm not going to let that skew my worldview anymore. You know, you have to get to some point where it's no longer one, it's a defense mechanism. And then the next time you're going, yeah, but is it holding me back? You know, I mean, I can't ever have another relationship. I can't ever have this. I can't. It's like the person who I'm never going to do that again because maybe they got yelled at or they forget a relation. It could be business. Oh, I did that one time and it didn't work, you know, so I'm never going to do that. Well, did you ever think that maybe the way you approached it that time was wrong or your process was wrong or whatever? Not that your goal was wrong, you know. And I think that that's one of the things about people honing in on something that happened years ago is that they hold themselves back of all the other possibilities. There's a lot of good lessons in pain. Okay. There's just is, you know, the stove is hot. The stove is hot. Okay. And, you know, that's why I don't just put my hand right on the burner. I'm pretty smart that way now. And so, but at the same time, you can't say, well, I'm never going to cook my food. You know, it doesn't make no sense. But you know, the extreme of it, right? The extreme of it. You don't want to be extreme. But I do think that people, me included, you think about things over and over and over again. It doesn't matter where you are in life, and go. You know, I'll catch myself every once thinking back on stuff. I go, you know, it's just wow, you know, and you know, I do believe that. Things happen for a reason that and God is in your life to point in a direction and stuff. So some of the lessons are hard learned and hard earned, you know. Uh, I still feel sometimes I could have done without a couple of the lessons, but it's not, you know, it does make who you are and all that kind of thing. I find myself thinking a lot of times of people who know me but they know you, but they think they know you. You know what I mean? Which is always kind of an irritant for me because you know what I let you know about me, and but there are people who listen to your story and they say, "Well, yeah, I know about Luke, and yeah, he had that happen to him. He had that happen to him," just because you said it, you know. But all the nuances of going through that, coming out of it better, all that whole life improvement cycle, people don't get, you know. So you got the people who live in the past and they just, whatever I have happened to me from this day till the day they kick dirt on my ass is because daddy didn't talk to me nice enough. Okay. That's it. Right.
Yeah.
And, I think that that's, you know, it's a built-in excuse. You know, it's a built-in excuse, and it's not real handy. You know, it's handy. It's not useful. Let's put it that way. So the going forward piece is the thing. I'm always thinking, even at my age, I'm going, well, what's my next mission? You know, what am I going to do? You know, I'm not sitting around. I don't ever think about just sitting around. You know, you used to think of that when you're younger. Oh, when you're retired, you just sit around and do this, do whatever you want to do. Yeah, that's true. You can. That's cool for about a week. Yeah, dude. It's just like vacations, you know. At some point, vacations stop being fun. I gotta get back to work. You gotta get. There's other things that motivate you or give you energy, other than uh, relaxation. You know, so you have to achieve things and stuff. So that's what I mean about these things that happen, and a little bit we talked about it in there's something similar to substance abuse. Okay, it's the same kind of thing. Yeah, if I want to sit around and talk to people, look, you know, I got a lot of friends that had broken up marriages and relationships and this and that. And we sit around and we just grind on that thing, you know. Yeah, you know, Sally. that whole thing, we just kind of ping off each other about this bad things that have happened to us. It's just like, to me, a bunch of drunks sitting around talking about being drunks.
Mhm.
I don't think it's helpful.
Right.
So you want to, you know, I don't want to repeat any mistakes. I don't want to step into any situations that, don't, with some forethought, you can avoid, you know, and, the rest of my life is not looking for those kind of pain points. You know, I'm not going to avoid a challenge because of it, but I'm not going to look for similar situations, so,
Or use,
you know,
yeah, like I said, or use it as a crutch or an excuse about why you're not gonna. I think your analogy of the stove is hot and I know it's hot. I could burn myself, but I'm not gonna cook my food. I think that you do see a lot of that, right? Like, you know, business relationships or whatever, then people that's a great spot for people to get stuck.
or they
Because
lean too much on the, let's go use that and keep going on. Let's say you got uh, a new relationship, a new business partner, a new personal partner and stuff. Well, I don't want to get burned again, but I got to eat, but I'm not going to cook. So I'm going to rely on my partner, business or personal, to do all the cooking for me. So in a way, you're telling somebody they got to carry the emotional burden for two of you.
right, was not
I'm
fair.
a, yeah, which is not fair. And it's probably not going to end up, but because you're really kind of like a child, at that point, you're just going, help me. You can be buried in the past. You can't get past it. This person is seeing you as, you're like the bird with the broken wing. Oh, I'll take care of you, stuff. But I don't know. You have to have a positive image of yourself, and that doesn't seem to lend to it too much. But, and you've probably seen personal examples of it, friends of yours, they just like, I've even seen people go into other relationships after bad ones, and the other relationship is not good because the person is very directive and demanding and stuff, and the person's so adverse to having another failure in a personal sense, putting up with just an outrageous relationship. You sit there going, go, wow, and you feel for him, and you understand what it is, but at the same time, you go, wow, buddy, you got to get it back into neutral somewhere.
You swing the pendulum hard the other way. I think the underlying thing, whether the situations are, doesn't matter what they are, right? They're going to keep coming up. I mean, childhood stuff is what childhood stuff is. But what's the perspective on that? What did you learn from it? How do you, you know, let it be what it is, or how do you, if it's really bad, how do you create a situation for your children that maybe is different? Like that's a great way to look at it when it comes from personal relationships or a business things that go sideways or they don't work out for you. There is going to be a piece of it where I do think for everybody, where you're going, no matter how long or short it is, you are going to feel like you're stuck in the muck, and it can feel like you're in quicksand. You're churning super hard and it just feels like it's the worst feeling. You feel like you're still sinking, but they gotta figure it out. And it goes back to, we talked about control, what you can control, or how do you pull yourself out a little bit, and start moving forward, because it can engulf you. And, how long do you want that misery to last? And very rarely is there going to be somebody to pull you out. So is it your faith? Is it something? But to get stuck in the feeling of those situations, especially when they're negative, and let that again affect the rest of the years ahead of you, it's just a miserable spot to be in.
I can recall two specific days. Won't get into all of it, but I can, when at the end of one of the cycles, like, right, It's depressing. You're like, there's no end to it. Am I going to ever get out of it? What the hell, right? Is uh, when you kind of this is where I came to was enough. It was just like enough. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit if I'm living on the street. Enough with this depression or whatever it is, you know. And I remember having a couple of times in my life where I woke up and I felt kind of clear in my thoughts, and I was like, fuck that, you know. And it was two of the greatest days of my life because you just say, no, you don't get to win, you know, on this. And and things took off from there, you know, and they did. And so there's, if you're going to give into it, well, then it's over. It's you know, your life's over. You think, you know, you're going to be in such a mess, you know, and you see people like that, you know, they're around you all the time, you know, and it's sad. Uh, and it's because I've got an excuse and I'm buried, and I just grind in this mosh pit of bullshit, you know, and you finally have to pull yourself out of it. You just have to do it, you know. Just got no, because you know what's your option? I mean, honestly, what's your option? I mean, there is no option, you know. So you have to say, look, you know, I can do this. I don't know what this is, but I'm going to do it, you know. And I specifically can think of these days, and it was just like a burden had been lifted off of me. And I wasn't anywhere close to being out of the problem I was in. Okay.
Just
So
your energy and perspective in the moment just changes things.
uh, you know, or God gives you a little shake on the shoulder. Hey, Scooter, you're going to be all right. You know?
Right.
And so anyway,
Well,
it's
I always envisioned it, you know, we can probably do multiple podcasts on this. And I think that there's a lot there, right? It's a lifetime of stuff. And I've seen this analogy before, but I at some point in one of those situations, I started to envision like your life is this long road or it's this long mountain climb, and we can use analogies of their small values to get to the next peak. And I used to explain to clients too. I would envision it like this road that then all of a sudden had these minor speed bumps, and you're gonna have to go over, and you'd see people get to a speed bump, and it's really not that big, but the speed bump is there. You go, oh, I got to go over this. I'm gonna just sit right here, and then that's it, and that's as far in the road as they'll go. And I would envision the missteps that I had in this life were like those speed bumps too. It's like I could take a 747 and put a wedge in front of that front tire and put it under the tire, and that big powerful machine won't go anywhere because that wedge right there will stop the whole machine. Well, if you've just backed up 10 feet and then gave her hell, that wedge doesn't even matter. And so I always had like these visuals to myself, like, yeah, that speed bump may be an issue right now, but if you just got up, didn't sit down, backed up a little bit, gave her hell, maybe get over that and we can move on, you know. But that's what I envision for people a lot. And I've been in those positions too, where you feel like you just sat down and put your camp, pitched a little camp, and then that was it. That's as far as we're going to go on this journey. Let's light my lamp and this looks good here. So I think you got to just decide, you know, hey, I actually probably want to get over this and move forward. And yeah, it does come internally. And I think we can continue to do this. I think this is where, you know, hopefully as we're doing these podcasts, it's helpful for people to have this understanding that everybody's got stuff that's going to come up. It's going to come up forever, but it's, you know, how do you perceive that situation? How do you get over the situation? What are the tools and tactics you need to move forward? Because if you sit down, it's just not going to get any better, but we got to move forward too. So
Yeah. So
Hopefully that.
let me just say this before we get off, so people don't think that uh, I'm just some hard bitten, scarred up dude and all that stuff. I have a pretty good life with a wife that loves me, and we have coffee every morning and laugh about things, and what we're going to do today, and everything is forward looking and positive, and those kind of things. But uh, part of that is being with the right person who helps you get over your own uh, how you think, your thought patterns, and those kind of things, and you can understand this. Anybody been in a relationship? Nobody knows you like that person, so they can see this thing coming. If you're starting to kind of wind into something, and they're like, "Hey, oh, let's live it." But so I'm very fortunate in that way, and so again, the things that we're talking about are many years ago, but they do have an impact on you. Try to make the impact turn into a positive.
Yeah. And take the gratitude for it, take the lesson for it. Again, like you said in the very beginning, you may want to have changed it or avoided the pain, but maybe it's what you needed. Maybe what you needed so you could get to that situation where you were having that nice cup of coffee and having a great situation. And so, but when you're in it, it sucks really bad. It's just, there's no doubt about it. But there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to keep chasing it a little bit and find the positivity as much as you can. And then, so hopefully, like we joked on, did you die? And if you did, that was always our joke. Then, and you turn around and go, "Whew,
Yeah, you're okay, right?
you okay? All right, not too bad." So, episode
Um,
episode 14 of Pops with Pops on personal strife and shortcomings, failures.
yeah, 72 more podcasts coming on that topic.
Most
um,
certainly can.
oh, we talk about like, sharing, and subscribing, and we've got the email at warriorsnotwimps@gmail.com. Please hit the button for us. I can see you're out there. It's kind of, it's like crickets, here. And if you got a question for us, send the email. And if you've got some topic you want us to talk about, send the email. But so far, this is kind of a one-way street. So we got to be able to kind of deal with it. Okay.
And we enjoy listening and talking to ourselves, but we will gladly
Yeah, we
take.
don't need you.
But we might enjoy it. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I love you. And
Love you too.
we'll talk soon.
Okay. Talk to you.
See ya.
Bye bye.